Good afternoon and welcome to Freedom Watch, a daily dose of raw liberty, streaming online at foxnews.com. I'm your host, Judge Andrew Napolitano, here defending freedom, defending your natural rights, and defending your right to have a government that stays within the confines of the Constitution. Every lawmaker swears an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Congressman James Clyburn, the third-ranking Democrat in the House of Representatives, told me last week that the Congress simply does not care about whether its behavior is constitutional. That may all change if a bill called the Enumerated Powers Act is passed and signed into law. Here to discuss the significance of this bill is Jim Babka, president of Downsize DC Foundation and downsizedc.org. Jim, welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Glad to be here, Judge.
Jim, tell me about the proposal, if one could ever be crafted, which would require the Congress to follow the Constitution.
Well, actually, it has been crafted and has been introduced by Representative John Shadegg of Arizona. It's called the Enumerated Powers Act, and it has more than 50 co-sponsors in the House and more than 20 co-sponsors in the Senate. And it simply says that in any bill that they pass, they have to cite kind of chapter and verse, if you will, from where in the Constitution do they derive their authority to pass this particular law.
You know, when I asked Congressman Clyburn last week where in the Constitution there is authority for the federal government to micromanage health care, he said to me, Judge, there's no authority for most of what we do down here. But you tell me, he retorted, where in the Constitution it's prohibited. Doesn't he have it in reverse? He seems to think that the Congress is a general legislature that can right every wrong, whereas in reality, the Constitution only gives the Congress 17 unique delegated powers. Would this proposal that Congressman Shadegg has introduced into the House require members of Congress to point to which of those delegated powers they're relying on for the legislation they're about to enact?
Well, we call them enumerated for a reason. I mean, you just put a number on them, and there may be some debate as to what that number may be, but it is definitely far more limited than what the Congress of the United States wants to admit. And yes, the health care reform bill would not pass muster. It is not one of the enumerated powers. And not only do you take into account the powers that you're citing, in, for example, in Article 1, Section 8, but also the 9th and 10th Amendment that underscore this point and say that the powers that are not specifically spelled out that belonging to the federal government belong to the states and the people. That means that those are our powers. They do not belong to the Congress.
Jefferson called the 10th Amendment the most important of the 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights because it was the one that guaranteed the sovereignty of the states. And yet there are Supreme Court justices who have basically said it's just a truism. Of course, that which isn't delegated is retained. And the Supreme Court for years has run roughshod over the 10th Amendment, allowing the Congress to get away with all kinds of things like declare that wheat grown by a farmer in his own field for consumption by his own family somehow is interstate commerce.
Well, you know, here at Downsize DC, we're actually inspired by the 9th and the 10th Amendments. So I love the entire Bill of Rights, but there's organizations representing virtually every one of those, and it seems like those last two get left out. And they're very, very, very important because if we followed them, we would definitely downsize the government. We would reduce its size, its scope, its expense, its intrusiveness and power.
How widespread is the phenomenon, Jim, of members of Congress not reading legislation before they vote on it? I spoke to a group of
It's on virtually every bill.
I spoke to a
It's on virtually every bill that's longer than 2 pages.
I spoke to a group of congressmen in the Midwest. I don't even want to tell you the state. And when I told them that the Patriot Act allows federal agents to write their own search warrants and bypass the constitutional requirement of going to a judge and presenting evidence of probable cause, they told me that they were shocked and that they didn't read the Patriot Act. They read only a summary of it prepared by the Justice Department, which somehow didn't include this offensive language that allows agents to write their own search warrants. What can be done, if anything, to force members of Congress to read things before they vote on them?
Well, we need a law, not just simply a rule, because they'll ignore their own rules. They waive their rules all the time. And DownsizeDC.org has presented a law. We've written the Read the Bills Act, which would require them to read their bills. We've got the bills available online for people to read at DownsizeDC.org. But it's a law. It's a binding law. And the great thing about our proposal is if Congress failed to follow the procedures that we spelled out in that bill, requiring them to read the bill, to sign an affidavit saying that they had done so, and before they cast a yes vote to spend our money or pass a law, then the law would be null and void. You could present the evidence in court saying, you know what, Your Honor, they didn't follow the procedure here, and the judge can throw the case out with impunity.
As a practical matter, how could you,
Yes.
how would you know if members of Congress read this, and how can you force them to do something which they have every inclination not to do?
Well, first of all, we have a requirement that if they're going to cast a yes vote, they're going to spend our money, pass a law, keep or create a program, that they have to sign an affidavit saying that they have read the bill or that they've read the bill. And the read the bill is a very important thing too, Judge, because it actually requires the bill to be read in order, word for word, in its entirety, start to finish, by the clerk. It stops all business so that they can read it. We believe this will have the effect of shortening bills and causing them to make decisions about how many bills they're capable of passing in a year. So we believe that this will have the effect of slowing down the growth of government and maybe even reducing it.
But we probably wouldn't see too many 1,100-page bills anymore. So they would have to swear under oath, under pain of perjury, that they either read this on their own or heard every word of it read on the floor of the House or the Senate.
That's exactly right. And this is why they're not rushing to go sign on this bill. We still have yet to have a single representative to agree to do it. We've had representatives put forth rules to read the bills. We've had them begin using the rhetoric of the importance of reading specific bills, but we haven't had any of them willing to come across and do this because they know that this would change their lives dramatically. We believe this is a simple matter, that there shouldn't be any legislation, no legislation without representation, that if you as a member of the public has to know what the law is, you can't go into court and say, Your Honor, I didn't know what the law is. The judge would respond, ignorance of the law is no excuse. And so we ask the question, why is that okay for Congress?
Before I let you go, where can folks learn more about this? Where can they go?
The best place to go is to downsizedc.org. The system is, we've got a simple and easy to use system that allows them to send a personalized message to the representatives and senators, join with thousands of others, demanding change on a variety of things, including the Read the Bills Act and the Enumerated Powers Act.
Jim Babka, thanks very much for joining us on Freedom Watch.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Judge.